My grandmother died on January 11th, 2017. She was 90 years old, and she became known to the world as Miss Betty, Grandma Mac. Now, before dementia developed into Alzheimer's, she was staying at her house in Florida. We played cards to keep her mind sharp. I shuffled, fully knowing that those were times I had to take advantage of, despite the difficulties of her depleting rationale and broken down body. One day we were playing Russian bank, and I decided to tell her I was migrating to New York to pursue my dreams as a writer. And her face became flushed with animation. She waved her clawed, osteoarthritis-ridden fingers, and her face erupted in the best smile you ever could see. She went on to share with me one of her last remaining memories. Miss Betty, you have to understand, told me the story over and over and over again as a symptom of losing her consciousness. Whether she saw the Mother of Exiles on a nightly news segment or was mentioned through conversation, to her, every time was the first time, and I was happy to indulge her and pretend like I never heard it before. You could tell that for a moment, her pain ceased, and as she became immersed in a rare visage of her history, the parents took her to New York for the World's Fair. The fair opened on April 30th, 1939, sharing a date with the inauguration of the first president of the United States. The event was called The Dawn of a New Day and a glimpse into the world of tomorrow. While a horrible past was still present in a nation built on trails of tears and sorrow, the tools of the future were put on full display for the eager white masses to become hitched on a star, the imprisoned lightning of a nation's heart. 6 months later, World War II would start, but there was still time for hope to dream of the cornucopia machines and the fruits of new industries, not the destruction that our own inventions would bring. It was a sunny, breezy day as Miss Betty was taken by ferry, passing Ellis Island along the way through the Sunset Gates to a mighty woman carrying a beaconing flame. When they arrived and found out that you had to climb stairs, her mother resigned. There was no way she was climbing all those stairs after her father dragged her around the city all week. And so her father took Miss Betty by the hand and led her up the winding staircase. There were so many steps, she never thought they would end. And finally, they reached the top. And you know those lights that shine from her, what's that called? The crown? Yes, the crown. Those are windows, and from all the way up there in the sky, you could see the entire city. It was so big. She could see it. She was reliving it right before me, and it was beautiful. Now, as long as my brain will allow me, I can revisit that space and see the happiness in her face. Now, 78 years later, today, Sunday, February 26, 2017, my brother and I went to the Statue of Liberty in memoriam. And despite there being millions of visitors every year, I felt her energy. She was there with us in the form of the little Pakistani girl being lifted to the window by her father. Or perhaps it was the German boy whose braces were the most oppressive thing in his life. I felt her all around me. And as I looked out from Liberty's mild eyes, I saw a world that hasn't changed much, for catastrophe seemed to be waiting behind silent lips. The promise of the skyline where the twins once stood made me think of my immigrant ancestor, Peter Vickland, who saw an opportunity as his ship entered the Bight. As the stories were told, he was a prisoner working aboard a British naval ship. When they reached the narrows of the air-bridged harbor, he must have performed last rites because a chance at independence was in his sight. He had to escape his fate. So as the ship entered the upper bay, he leaped overboard and swam to the sea-washed shores where he became one with the wretched, tired, and poor. He changed his name to Nelson, the first of his kind, and joined the Union Navy, where he became submerged in a civil war he couldn't have possibly understood. He was willing to die for the country that welcomed him with insults and violence. He fought to get here and he fought to live here, ironclad with a mentality to rise above his station and make a mark on this nation. Well, after the war, he migrated to South Dakota, another white settler on sacred land. He was no different than my generation's gentrification. He may have just been looking for a place, but he was unable to see that he was taken away, as the Dakota Wars were and still are being waged. The seventh generation is rising, demanding progression. Knowing a flood is rumbling, the tide forming with force, as millions of individuals come together to form a nature that cannot be drilled, imprisoned, silenced, degraded, shamed, berated, banned, spilled, tortured, or ripped apart by shrapnel while making vows of marriage. We are all immigrants. Watch the streets sink under the weight of the righteous, the queer and foreign, the deviant and domesticated, afraid and brave, the refugees and native, the exiled and underpaid teachers, the poets and musicians, the timid, the seekers, the social justice lawyers and unemployed workers, the coaches, guardians and doctors, the women and soldiers, the passive, the active, the justice warriors, the religious, the atheist, the sex worker, the prudent, the lost, the blue collar, and the student. This hurricane has no name, for it is the culmination of every oppression, and no wall can deter or withstand the weather souls raging. The frame of the painting doesn't have room to contain it. Narrators are born when the voiceless sing to overcome their pain. Heroes are driven by tempests to engage, sacrifice to provide a stage for the truth to be stated. This ain't no fake news or alternative fact. A tale of underdogs and outsiders overcoming to win an impossible race despite a rigged track is the story of America that deserves a standing ovation. This country was founded on a double standard. The Declaration spoke of equality while the men that wrote it owned plantations. Truth becomes a lie only when a lie is spoken as the truth. 2 + 2 is infinity. Love is only given. Hate everything. Follow the plan, and the plan has always been to marginalize and alienate the rights of entire communities, reducing them to fearful caricatures embodied by misrepresentation in order to justify ethnic cleansing in the name of special interests. I am not Peter Vickland or my grandmother, though I was born from the spirit. And I brazenly defy power structures and treasonous sanctions against my fellow citizens. Praise the resistance, raise the youth to be persistent, and never trust a man who wears a wig but assures you it's real, or paints himself orange with the devil with the deal, who lives in an ivory life high up in the golden towers, because a rich man who spends all his time in the clouds sees the world much differently than those who live on the ground. When I was 11 years old, my parents told me about the Holocaust at the dinner table. It was '97 and Schindler's List would be broadcasted that night on NBC. They told me millions of people died. My little mind couldn't handle it. I remember asking, why? Why would anybody do that? Why? The same thing happened when they told me about slavery. Roots was being shown without commercial interruption. Why? I cried for each undeserved death and hysterically pleaded them not to force me to watch. My parents told me I had to learn the harsh reality beyond the Eurocentric history taught to me in school so that I would never again let it happen. This was the first time I removed the lenses of blissful ignorance and white privilege. So today, I left Mother Liberty with my heart weighing heavily on our ancestors and our peers and our children. The shadows of the financial district, whose structures were built on the mass graves of slaves, turned the warm sun into a trembling chill. And when the ferry reached the shore, I made an oath that each step from the battery to death would be made in opposition to society's regression. Because our history is what got us here in the first place. And what a state we are in. Thank you. Keep fighting.